Hey guys, welcome to Jam's Adventures. This is like session 4 of our series on, Trump tragedy and probably some mental illness and also just issues with life. We're talking about my personal traumas and what's going on in my life right now, and hopefully it's going to help other people out there. I'm at Orange Beach, Alabama again, and just talking to you guys about those things. Last time we were talking about how I ended up in a horrible situation in Arkansas after I had a breakdown, and my kids asked me to leave, and I ended up in Arkansas with no money and nowhere to go. And my daughter from Mississippi drove 8 hours with my mom and my son-in-law picked me up, and now I'm in Mississippi. So while I'm in Mississippi, I'm just at the end of my rope. I'm at the worst place in my life, and I'm stuck in Mississippi. I don't have a car. I don't have any money. I don't have anything, but I'm in Mississippi, and so I just walk. I go out and walk. It's a Sunday. Anyway, I spend a whole day walking. I walk around my hometown of Petal, Mississippi. I go visit my son's grave, David, the same David who I asked if I could give a hug when I told God I was ready to get a hug and I was ready to go home, so I wanted a hug. That David, I went to his grave and asked him, prayed for God to intervene in my life. And then I went back, and I have 2 daughters in Mississippi that are married and they have kids. So those 2 daughters sat down and were talking to me, and they were very mad at me. They were very mad at me because, the things that I've done to my other kids, also they experienced when they were little kids, they were mad at me. So these 2 daughters are from my previous marriage, my first marriage. And they were very young when me and my first wife divorced. And that marriage devastated me. So I know what divorce does to people. That marriage devastated me. My wife left me for another man. And I was in the military at the time, so I was stuck in Oklahoma. She moved back to Mississippi with my 2 daughters and wanted a divorce and met someone else and wanted to get married. And I was stuck in Oklahoma by myself in the military, in the Air Force, and I couldn't. And I always, my daughters, I missed my daughters, I missed her, and my heart was broken. So it was a horrible time in my life. It made me so angry and bitter, and I was so mad. And it started to affect my relationship with my kids. So soon after we were divorced, I met my wife now, Stephanie, and she saved my life, because me and my wife Stephanie she was going through a divorce, I was going through a divorce, or we both went through divorces at the same time, and we both had spouses that didn't respect us or appreciate us, and we were both heartbroken and we were miserable. So when we got together, I was scared of her because she was so miserable and I was so miserable. I don't even know why we were even hanging out, because we were just 2 miserable people. We weren't happy, and but some reason, we hung out and we ended up talking, and I was scared because I didn't want to give my heart to another woman, and this woman was broken. I was broken, and what am I doing with this broken woman? It was horrible. So for a couple of months, me and her were just trying to figure out, what the heck are we doing? Why are we together? And but eventually, we started to heal. Because we healed, we started to talk, and we were able to heal each other's hearts, and God was working in us, and God put it on my heart to marry this woman. She's the one. This is your wife, so marry her. And I was scared. I didn't want to. I was scared. I had to get a lot of courage to do it. So this is November when we met, and we got married in April. So 5 months later, after we met, we decided to get married, and we committed our lives to each other. And then we immediately started having children. And my life changed because this marriage was different. My first wife didn't appreciate me, and we didn't have a good relationship. And even though I loved her, we tried. We were young. We were 17 and 18. Or at that point in our life, we'd been married for 7 years. So I was like 24, 25 when she left me. So she was in her early 20s too. So we were young, but this was a devastating divorce for me. But I met my wife. I learned to love again. But as soon as we got married, we left we had 2 children, and then when I left the Air Force and moved back to Mississippi, because I wanted to be with those 2 daughters that from my previous marriage. I didn't want not be in their life. So I left the Air Force and moved back to Mississippi to be with those 2 daughters. But the problem was, me and my ex-wife did not have a good relationship. We were very mean to each other, and it was a horrible relationship. And my 2 daughters in Mississippi were right in the middle of that, and I was still broken and hurt and all this stuff. And my 2 daughters experienced a lot of that anger and stuff, because anytime I would go pick them up, it would turn into an argument, and my daughters were right in the middle of that, and it broke them. That was my first 2 daughters, and I'm so sorry for that. But all that trauma from there, that was the start of this, okay? The start of this trauma cycle that's caused me to have a breakdown. But they were so little. I think they were like 2 and 7 or 8. The oldest one was 7 or 8, and the other one was 2 or 3 at that point in time. But my life was just, I had a new wife and we had kids together, so that was great. But I was trying to keep a relationship with those other 2 kids and with my ex-wife, and my ex-wife's relationship was still keeping me down and still driving me crazy, and she was still mad as heck, and I was still mad as heck, and that was getting in between my relationship with those 2 daughters. And now that they're adults and they're both married, it has created strife for us, and they told me that it took them a long time to forgive me, and so I've been trying to work with them. But either way, the whole point is, after I had that incident in Arkansas and wrecked my car and didn't have nowhere to go, my oldest daughter from my first marriage picked me up with my mom and her husband and took me back to Mississippi, and they sit me down and have a talk with me and tell me that they tell me that they're so mad at me for trying to, for being in this situation. But they also tell me, that they had all this trauma. But here's the thing. They were able to forgive me, and they want me to get help. And because they were able to forgive me, there's hope that Stephanie, my wife, would forgive me. And they told me that I needed to get help. And I didn't want to until they looked at me and they said, look, we're here for you. You need to do this for us because we want you to get help. And I said, okay, but I'm not suicidal. I don't necessarily need anything. I said, I'd like to go to a vet center to get help, but there wasn't a vet center where we were at. So that, my daughter works at a hospital in an emergency room. So she said, well, here, go to this hospital and just check yourself in and let's make sure you're okay. I was like, I don't want to, but I'm going to do this for you because she said she forgave me. And me and her had this horrible relationship our whole life. And she finally said that she was ready to have a relationship with me and forgive me. And because of that, I was willing to do it. So I went to the hospital, spent the night in the hospital. The next day, they sent me to Meridian, Mississippi, which was 2 hours away, to this mental health facility for 5 days. I didn't necessarily know how long I was going to be there, but it was a horrible experience because this was basically an isolation ward. So here I am. I'm horrible. My heart's broken. I'm in a horrible condition, and now I'm in this isolation ward with all these other broken people. And I was there for 5 days, but I didn't know how long I was going to be there. When you're there, you have no idea. You could be up there up to two weeks because it's a temporary facility. It's not a long-term facility, so you could be up there to 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God, I gotta be here for 2 weeks. That was like an eternity. So I'm in this isolation ward. There's nothing to do. They give you crayons. You have crayons and crayons and SpongeBob coloring books. That's all you have to do. And I'm in there with like 13 or 14 other people. Some of these people are drug addicts, and they're coming off of. Some of these people are coming off of being on drugs and being high and overdosing. Some of the people in there were, just tried to commit suicide. So there's a couple of guys in there that tried to commit suicide. And a couple, a lot of ladies in there, older ladies, or people my age and younger. There's younger people, older people, so it's a whole mix of people. But while I'm in there, this is supposed to be a therapy program. And when I signed into this program, they swore that it was a therapy program, that they were going to give us therapy. But we get there and we find out this isn't a therapy program, and there is no therapy. So after being there a day, I start talking to the other patients, and we realize that we're not going to get therapy, and we're all broken, right? So we just start talking. And, I have a little bit of experience with therapy because I worked last year in a therapy program for a year with troubled teens. And matter of fact, that made being in this hospital even worse because this is what I do to help other people. This is not where I need to be. But I started talking to people about therapy things and healing, and we started talking. So after you know, 3 or 4 days, we got to all be friends, and some of these people were older, some of these people were younger, but we were all talking and spending time. We were having fun, we were joking, and we were all sitting in the break room just giving each other therapy, hugging each other, you know, and it was awesome. But I fell in love with these people, and these were people who were broken. And once again, just like when I was in Arkansas and I told you that God put it on my heart to go, you know, get the Gatorade and help the homeless people with the Gatorade, and then I told God that I had a heart for people. Now here I am in a mental institute, and once again, instead of sitting in this mental institute and feeling sorry for myself, I decided to help other people. So I went around and talked to people, got to know the other 13 people. We talked about things, and I tried to help them, and they also tried to help me. So we were basically giving each other therapy. But there was one lady. She was a social worker. And the only person who talked to me in this whole time that had any professional experience, she was a social worker. She came to my room and sat down beside me, and we talked for like an hour and a half. And she asked me what was going on and what was I doing there. And I told her all the things that I'd done, and how I had anger issues and all these things, and what was going on with me and my wife and my kids, and that I was just, you know, so depressed and so mad at myself. And she looks at me and she goes, "Have you ever had any sexual trauma?" And I'm like, "No." What are you talking about? Sexual trauma? I work in a therapy program in Idaho, and I help other people with yes, I help those people with sexual trauma, but I don't have any sexual trauma. She goes, "You have classic symptoms of sexual trauma." And I said, "No, I don't have sexual trauma." And she said, "I'm going to give you some paper, and I'm going to give you a pen." She wasn't supposed to give me a pen. We were only allowed to have colors. She gave me a bunch of paper and a pen and told me to go write and see what happens. She said, "Just write, and don't stop writing until stuff comes out." So I went and wrote for several hours, 24 pages. I wrote 24 pages, front and back. It was front and back. It was 24 pages. And that's where I started to remember what happened to me when I was 5 years old and how it affected me. And because of that event, I started to see how, you know, that sexual trauma was built up in me, and plus all the other stress in my life and my relationship with all my wife and kids, and the, you know, the resentment that had built up in me, and how I didn't love myself, and I hated myself, and I resented myself, and how me resenting myself, I threw that and projected that to my kids and my wife, and because I was projecting that on them, they started to actually resent me because of that. So my depression was causing people to resent me, even though that's what I was scared of, is people resenting me. So we were feeding off of each other, and that caused us to blame each other and create some issues in our communication process. And eventually all this stress that I had over the last 10 years from losing all these jobs and just not being able to be successful in my career, that was my chosen career, to be an airport manager, that I love aviation, but yet I was failing at it because I wasn't a politician. All that stress built up, plus going and working in therapy and being around children who had, and young adults who had sexual trauma, that woke up my internal feelings about sexual trauma, and that strengthened my depression and made me come home to my family. And even though I was trying to work on our relationships and build a better relationship with my kids and my wife, it was overshadowed by the depression that just came in, until eventually it all came to a head. And 6 weeks ago, I had a mental breakdown, got kicked out of my house, ended up wrecking in Arkansas, totaling my car, and ended up in Mississippi in this program where I'm writing this letter, this 24-page letter, and starting to realize, you know, the things in my life that got me here. Yeah, so after 5 days, I get out of the mental institute. My mom comes, picks me up, and takes me back to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is 2 hours away. And the first thing on my mind is I got to get back to Kansas City to my wife. So I beg people to give me a car, and finally my son-in-law loans me his truck. And not even a day after I'm out of the mental hospital, I'm on the road to Mississippi to go see my wife, and I ask her if she's willing to meet at her aunt's house, and we can talk about what's going on, because we need to sit down and talk with me, her, and the kids. So I drive all the way there. I had missed her birthday, and also I didn't get her an anniversary. Our anniversary was just previously her Mother's Day and her birthday. So I stopped at Walmart. I bought her some presents for her Mother's Day, for her birthday, and for her birthday, Mother's Day, and our anniversary, and some cards. So I go to her aunt's house. Her and all the kids are sitting around the table, and she has that look that I told you I'd never seen before, until I saw that look with the sparkle was gone and the darkness in her eyes, and she couldn't look at me, and she was just like a broken person. And I saw her again. Now, this is the problem, guys. I've been married to this woman for 24 years. We have never not been able to talk. We've always had problems, like every marriage. Everybody has problems, but we've also survived a lot. We've been through a lot of traumatic things together, including losing a son, and we've had a lot of issues, but we've always been able to hold each other's hands. We've always been able to talk through it and work through things. Maybe not perfectly, and maybe our communication was never perfect, but this was the first time in my life that I never thought in my life that I would lose this woman, that our marriage could be at risk. And at this moment in my life, I realized that our marriage is in trouble. And I never thought that would happen. I never thought I would look at her and see that our marriage is in trouble. But at this moment, I was looking at her and seeing that our marriage was in trouble. I brought my 24-page letter that I wrote in the mental hospital, and I gave it to my kids and her. And I'm reading it to her, right? All right, helicopter. Here comes a helicopter. Bye, helicopter. So in my mind, I think that this letter is going to open a door, right? Because I wrote this 24-page letter. I've got all this trauma. I figure out who I am, why I was this way, why I blame the kids, why I was always angry at the kids, why the kids are mad at me is because I was always angry and how I overreacted to situations. So I read this letter to my kids, and no reaction. They're not really reaction to me. Matter of fact, they're not even wanting to listen to me. They're all kind of in a different place and they're not into this conversation. My wife's not looking at me. She's just shaking her head, telling me that it doesn't matter. Nothing you say matters. This doesn't matter. I don't care if you had trauma. What does this trauma have to do with our marriage? What does any of this have to do with our marriage, right? She's not really even talking to me. And so after we have this conversation, you know, I'm just trying to get through to her, and it's not working. Nothing I'm saying is working. She doesn't care. She completely does not want to listen to me or talk to me or hear me. So we talk about me getting in therapy, that we need marriage counseling and I need therapy, and that she's nothing's gonna happen unless I go get therapy. So we make that decision that I need to find a way to get therapy, and that I'm gonna get therapy and start working on these things. And she may or may not be willing to go to marriage therapy counseling. So she tells me I can go to the house and pick up some of my clothes and stuff, and so I do. I drove all night to come see her. We talked for 5 hours, then I go to my house and pick up some clothes, and then I get back on the road and drive all the way back to Mississippi. So guys, I call the VA. I get into some counseling. I'm able to get counseling with a psychologist out of the Excelsior Springs, which is North Kansas City. Excelsior Springs is a city north of Kansas City, northeast of Kansas City, and that's where because I'm a veteran, I get veterans help. So they're willing to do a video conference with me every week or two. So I start talking to this guy, and then he recommends I work with the vet center, because the vet center in Kansas City. And there's a vet center in Mobile, Alabama, because I'm in Mississippi, and the closest vet center was 2 hours away in Mobile, Alabama. So, and then the closest one in Kansas City to my wife was in Kansas City, the vet center. So the vet center actually offers marriage counseling for veterans. So I start talking to them and trying to figure out how to get me and my wife into marriage counseling. The one in Mobile is willing to meet with me weekly, so I drive down to Mobile 2 hours once a week to talk to them. I'm also talking once a week with the psychologists in Excelsior Springs, and I'm also working to get my wife into therapy in Kansas City. So this was about a month ago, after I got out of that mental hospital. So, you know, this was the week after Memorial Day. And I start going to therapy. The first couple of sessions is just me spilling my guts and being a big baby and whining about this whole situation. But after the first 2 sessions, then the psychologist in Excelsior Springs starts to give me some great idea and ask me why I think this happened. And that's where I realized he starts talking to me about, you know, my sexual trauma and how that made me, you know, wear my heart on my sleeve, but also because I am a very protective person. My personality became a protective personality, but in my mind, my protective personality was to protect people, but the way it came across is aggressive and controlling and overbearing to my children and to my wife. and then plus my personality to stand up against myself and bullies and all the trauma in my life was to be loud and always be loud in my life. And I've always been a loud person and overly aggressive. So because I'm loud and overly aggressive, and because I have that military bearing from being in the Air Force and while it works in the Air Force, and I survived the Air Force with this personality was not the personality to bring home. So bringing my military bearing home and trying to be a military drill sergeant to my children, and getting overly upset with them and trying to, being overbearing and controlling. By the way, I don't know I'm doing all this, right? I realize it now, but during all these moments, I'm not realizing this. And I'm not doing this to hurt people. I'm not doing this to cause people harm. I'm doing this because I think I'm protecting them. I think that I'm showing them how to be strong. I think that they're going to be great kids and grow. But what I'm doing is I'm causing resentment, and I'm causing them to fear me, and I don't realize it. It was having the opposite effect, and I'm in the middle of this and I don't see it. So now when my wife looks at me and said, why didn't you see all this? Why didn't you ask for therapy over? Why did you not see this? Why do you see it now and you didn't see it before? Because I didn't. I did not see it. I did not understand it. Now I see it and understand it, but I did not see it and understand it. And that's the thing. When you're in the middle of all this stuff going on, you don't see it because it's a slow process. It wasn't all at one time. It's a slow trickle. So the room flooded, right? The whole house is flooded, but it was a trickle. The house didn't flood because there was a gush of water all at once, so I didn't recognize it. It was a trickle. And who's afraid of a trickle, right? A trickle's a trickle. But after 24 years, that trickle flooded the house, and it flooded my relationships. It flooded my family. It destroyed my family. It destroyed my relationships. And no, I didn't recognize it. But I also didn't do it purposeful, right? So, but with this, next time I'll tell you how this has affected my wife. So far I've told you how we got here. This is, I think, the third or fourth. I don't even know. I'm losing track of how many sessions we have. This might be the fourth session. But, we've got through my trauma and how I got to be this person and my personality, and how my personality has wrecked my relationships. So next we'll talk about my wife a little bit and what's going on with her, and how there's a clash between my trauma and her personality and her trauma, and how my trauma is her trauma now. But anyway, thanks for joining me. I'm Jam. This is Jam's Adventures. I appreciate you guys. Please like and subscribe. You guys can leave a comment, and like I said last time, use the Gmail address and send me your address if you want a Jam's Adventure sticker. Also, leave a comment that you've sent me an email so that I can know. I don't check that email very often, but I appreciate you guys. Please watch the next episode. We're going to keep putting up adventure videos. So if you don't like my emotional videos, you don't have to watch them, but eventually we'll have some more adventure videos, and I am putting in between all these videos are adventure videos for you guys to watch of some of the places we've been the last 12 months, last 16 months. But I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.